The rain began just after dawn on October 17, 1994. A cold, persistent drizzle that slicked the cracked asphalt of Cedar Hollow High's parking lot and turned the surrounding pine forests into a blur of gray-green mist. It wasn't the kind of rain that washed things clean. This was the kind that seeped into your bones, that clung to your skin like a memory you couldn't shake. Inside the school, fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly yellow glow on linoleum floors worn thin by decades of shuffling feet. Lockers slammed. Backpacks thudded against metal. The bell hadn't rung yet, but already the air hummed with restless energy, the kind that comes before something big or something bad. 23 students stood near the front office, bundled in mismatched jackets, clutching permission slips and half-eaten granola bars. They were juniors, mostly 16, a few 17, chosen for the annual geology field trip to Devil's Gorge, a jagged limestone canyon 30 miles west, where fossils jutted from the rock like broken teeth. It was supposed to be educational, supposed to be fun, supposed to be safe. Their teacher, Mr. Elias Vance, paced in front of them, clipboard in hand, eyes darting toward the double doors every few seconds. He was 52, thin as a wire, with salt and pepper hair combed too neatly over a bald spot. He wore the same brown corduroy jacket every day, elbows patched, pockets bulging with chalk dust and worry. Today, though, his hands trembled slightly as he checked names off the list. Not from nerves, from something deeper, something he hadn't told anyone. Behind him, leaning against the wall with arms crossed, stood Deputy Ray Calloway, broad-shouldered, square-jawed, with a sheriff's star pinned crooked on his chest and a coffee stain on his khaki shirt. He'd volunteered to escort the bus, not because it was required, but because he knew the roads out west, knew how they twisted through the hills like snakes, knew how easy it was to disappear out there. He'd grown up in these parts, knew the silence, knew the secrets the pines kept. "All right, listen up," Vance called, voice cracking slightly. "We load in 10. Boss arrives at 8:15 sharp, no stragglers, no last-minute bathroom breaks. We've got a schedule to keep." He glanced at his watch. 8:07. The bus was late. A girl with fiery red hair and freckles, Lena Morrow, rolled her eyes and nudged her best friend, Mateo Ruiz. "He's sweating like he murdered someone," she whispered, loud enough for 3 kids to hear. Mateo grinned, adjusting the strap of his camera bag. He'd brought his father's old Nikon, hoping to capture the primal majesty of the gorge. He dreamed of being a photojournalist, of seeing the world, of escaping Cedar Hollow, population 2,841, a town that smelled of damp earth, diesel fumes, and quiet desperation. Near the back, a quiet boy named Jonah Pike kept his head down, fingers tracing the frayed edge of his notebook. He didn't want to go, had begged his mother to let him stay home, said he felt off, like the air was charged with static. But she'd insisted. "It's good for you, Jonah. Get out of your head for once." Now he stood there, heart thudding, eyes fixed on the floor as if it might swallow him whole. The bus finally rumbled into view at 8:22, yellow, dented exhaust coughing black smoke. It's number 47. Driver, Frank Dobbs, 61. Retired mechanic, part-time bus driver, known for his punctuality and his silence. He nodded curtly as the kids filed aboard, eyes hidden behind thick bifocals, no smile, no greeting, just the hiss of the air brakes and the creak of folding doors. Deputy Calloway climbed on last, scanning the seats. Kids chattered, laughed, plugged in Walkmans. Normal, routine. But as he took the seat behind the driver, something prickled at the back of his neck. A smell, faint, metallic beneath the usual stink of old vinyl and teenage sweat. He frowned, dismissed it. Probably just the rain. The bus pulled away at 8:31 a.m. Tires splashing through puddles, rear lights glowing red in the mist. Vance sat near the front, staring out the window, jaw clenched. Dobbs gripped the wheel with white-knuckled hands. Calloway watched the road unfold, narrow, winding, flanked by towering pines that leaned inward like conspirators. The sky darkened. Thunder rumbled in the distance. Not close, but coming. By 9:15, they reached the turnoff for Devil's Gorge Road, a gravel path, barely wide enough for one vehicle. Vance stood. "All right, everyone. We'll be stopping at the overlook first. Stay together. No wandering. And for God's sake, don't lean over the edge." The bus groaned as it turned onto the gravel. Stones pinged against the undercarriage. Branches scraped the windows like skeletal fingers. The kids fell silent. Even Lena stopped joking. There was something about this place, the way the light didn't quite reach the ground, the way the wind whispered through the rocks. It felt watched. They parked at the overlook at 9:28. The gorge yawned below, hundreds of feet deep, walls striated with ancient stone. A rusted guardrail separated them from the drop. Vance began his lecture about sedimentary layers, but no one was listening. They were too busy staring into the abyss. Calloway stayed by the bus, arms crossed, eyes scanning the tree line. He'd patrolled these woods for 15 years. Never liked this spot. Too isolated, too quiet. He lit a cigarette against regulations and exhaled slowly, watching the smoke curl into the damp air. Then, at 9:47, it happened. A scream, sharp, terrifying. Calloway spun. Kids scattered like startled birds. Vance shouted, "What was that?" Mateo was already running toward the sound, camera in hand. Lena followed, heart pounding. They found Jonah Pike crouched behind a boulder, pale as paper, pointing down into the gorge. There's someone down there," he stammered, moving in the shadows. Calloway radioed it in. Static crackled back. "Weak signal." He told Vance to keep the kids together. Then he started down the narrow trail, flashlight cutting through the gloom. 10 minutes later, he returned alone. "Nothing," he said, voice tight. "Just rocks, shadows, kids' imagination." But his hands were shaking, and his boots were muddy, though the trail had been dry. The group regrouped. Unease hung thick in the air. Vance tried to resume the lesson, but his voice wavered. At 10:15, he called it. "Back to the bus. We're cutting it short." As they climbed aboard, Mateo noticed something odd. The bus door. It hadn't been locked, and the driver's seat was empty. "Where's Dobbs?" he asked. No one answered. They searched the immediate area, called his name. Nothing. Just the wind. Just the trees. Vance checked the ignition. Keys were gone. Radio dead. Engine cold. Panic flickered in their eyes. Calloway tried his radio again. Still static. "All right," he said, forcing calm. "We walk back to the main road. It's only 2 miles. We'll flag down a car." But as they turned to leave, Lena froze. "Wait, where's Jonah?" He'd been right behind her. Now, gone. "Jonah!" Mateo yelled. "Jonah, where are you?" Silence. Then a low, guttural engine roar in the distance, fading fast. Calloway's blood ran cold. The bus, they sprinted to the overlook. The yellow vehicle was already rounding a bend, tires spitting gravel, heading east, away from town, away from help. "No," Vance screamed, collapsing to his knees. 23 students, 1 teacher, 1 deputy, 1 driver. Now, only 22 students, 1 teacher, 1 deputy, and a bus vanishing into the mist. The search began before noon. Sheriff Eleanor Briggs, tough, no nonsense, with steel-gray hair pulled into a severe bun, arrived with 3 cruisers, 2 K9 units, and a state trooper helicopter. Within hours, the National Guard was mobilized. Volunteers combed the woods with flashlights and dogs. News vans from Portland rolled in, their satellite dishes sprouting like mushrooms after rain. Cedar Hollow became a ghost town of yellow tape and anxious faces. They found nothing. No tire tracks leading off the road. No signs of struggle. No bodies. No bus. It was as if the earth had opened up and swallowed them whole. Theories bloomed like poisonous flowers. Alien abduction, cult ritual, government experiment gone wrong. But Sheriff Briggs stuck to facts. Boss 47 left the Overlook at approximately 10:20 a.m. with 23 students, 1 teacher, 1 deputy, and 1 driver. Only 22 students and 1 teacher returned. Deputy Calloway claims the bus was stolen while he was searching the gorge. Driver Frank Dobbs is missing. Student Jonah Pike is missing. The bus is gone. Calloway's story didn't add up. Why leave the keys? Why not lock the door? Why was his radio dead? Why did his boots have mud from a dry trail? He was questioned for 12 hours, released due to lack of evidence. But suspicion clung to him like smoke. Vance became a recluse. Moved out of town within a month. Changed his name. Disappeared. The parents? They broke. Some drank. Some divorced. Some never left their porches, staring down the road as if the bus might still come home. Years passed. The case went cold. The town healed on the surface. But beneath, the wound festered. Every October 17th, someone left 23 white roses at the school gate. Every anniversary, the local paper ran the same grainy photo of the missing kids, smiling, hopeful, frozen in time. Then, on November 3rd, 2021, 27 years, 2 weeks and 2 days later, a construction crew digging the foundation for a new housing development on the outskirts of Cedar Hollow hit something solid 10 feet below the surface. Not rock, metal, rusted, twisted, buried. They called the police. Sheriff Briggs, now retired, but still sharp as a razor, was the first on scene. She stood at the edge of the pit, rain falling softly, heart hammering in her chest. Workers used excavators to carefully uncover the object. Slowly, slowly, the shape emerged. A school bus, yellow paint bleached by time, windows shattered, roof caved in. Number 47 barely visible beneath layers of dirt and roots. Briggs didn't need to check the VIN. She knew they'd found it. But what or who was inside? The excavation took 3 days. Rain turned the site into a mud pit. Forensic teams in white suits moved like ghosts under floodlights. Sheriff Briggs, officially retired but unofficially in charge, stood watch every hour, coffee gone cold in her thermos, eyes never leaving the pit. The media descended again. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. She ignored them all. On the 4th morning, they breached the rear emergency door. The stench hit first. Thick, sweet, suffocating. Decades of decay trapped in a metal tomb. Then, silence. Not the silence of emptiness. The silence of waiting. Briggs descended the ladder first. Flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. Dust motes danced in the light. Seats were torn, overturned. Backpacks rotted into pulp. A single sneaker size 8. Red laces lay near the front. A water bottle, green, half crushed. A notebook, pages fused together by moisture. But no bodies. No bone. No remains. Just absence. And one thing that didn't belong. Taped to the driver's seat, a Polaroid photograph. Faded, water-stained, but clear enough. It showed 23 students standing in a circle in the woods, smiling, arms around each other, like a team photo. But their eyes were wide, terrified, and in the background, barely visible behind the trees, a figure in a dark coat, watching. Briggs's breath caught. She recognized the location. Devil's Gorge, but not the Overlook. A clearing deep in the woods. A place locals called the Hollow. A place she'd never told anyone about, because she'd been there once, as a girl, and she'd seen something she couldn't explain. Now, it was back. Detective Marcus Rourke arrived 2 days later. mid-40s, lean, sharp-eyed. From the Oregon State Police Cold Case Unit. He'd read the file, knew the legend, knew the whispers, but he didn't believe in ghosts. Only evidence, only lies, only human evil. He met Briggs at the site. She handed him the Polaroid without a word. He studied it. This wasn't taken on the day of the trip. No, she said. The clothes, the hair. It's from earlier that week. Maybe even the day before. How do you know? I know those kids. I saw them every day. Lena Morrow wore that blue flannel on Monday. Mateo always had his camera strap looped twice on Tuesdays. This is Tuesday. Rourke frowned. So someone took them into the woods before the trip, made them pose. Then, what? Brought them back. Why? Briggs looked away. Maybe they never came back. The investigation reignited like a struck match. Rourke started with the living. First, Deputy Ray Calloway, now 68, living in a trailer on the edge of town. Bald, frail, eyes haunted. He opened the door before Rourke could knock. I knew you'd come, he said, voice raspy. I've been waiting 27 years. Inside, the trailer smelled of mothballs and regret. Photos of the missing kids covered one wall, newspaper clippings, maps, timelines. Obsession made visible. Tell me what really happened, Rourke said, sitting across from him at a rickety table. Calloway poured 2 glasses of cheap whiskey. Didn't drink his. I lied, he whispered. About the scream. There was no scream. Jonah Pike didn't see anyone in the gorge. He saw something else. What? He saw the bus, parked deeper in the woods, off the main road, hidden. He followed it, saw Dobbs talking to someone, a man in a dark coat. They were arguing. Then, Dobbs handed him an envelope. Thick, cash, maybe. Rourke leaned forward. Who was the man? I don't know, but I recognize the coat. Same one from the Polaroid. And you didn't report this? Calloway's hands shook. I tried. Radio was dead. Battery drained. Like someone had tampered with it. When I got back, the bus was gone. Kids were panicked. I thought if I told them what I saw, they'd panic more. Or worse, they'd run. Into the woods. Alone. So you made up the scream story? Yes. And Jonah? Calloway's eyes filled with tears. He must have gone back to find answers. Or to warn someone. I don't know, but he never came back. Rourke studied him. Why bury the bus? I didn't. Then who did? Calloway looked out the window. Someone who wanted it to stay hidden, forever. Next, Frank Dobbs's widow, Martha, 80 now, living in a nursing home. Memory fading. But when Rourke showed her the Polaroid, her eyes sharpened. That's him, she whispered. Who? The man in the coat. He came to our house, night before the trip. Said Frank owed him money. From the old days. What old days? She hesitated. Frank wasn't always a mechanic. In the 70s, he drove for a logging company. Out near the hollow. They cut down trees no one was supposed to touch. Sacred ground, some said. Bad luck. Did he say who the man was? No name. But he had a tattoo. On his neck, a snake, coiled around a key. Rourke's pulse quickened. A key. Yes, like he held secrets. The tattoo, the key, the hollow. Pieces clicked. Rourke dug deeper. Old property records. Logging permits. Sheriff's logs from the 70s. He found it. In 1973, a logging crew, led by a man named Silas Crow, was granted permission to clear a section of forest near Devil's Gorge. But locals protested, said the land was protected by tribal elders, said it was a burial ground. The permits were revoked, but Crow kept cutting. Illegally. Then, in 1975, Crow vanished. Along with 3 of his men. No bodies, no case closed as presumed dead in logging accident. But Rourke knew better. He cross-referenced Crow's known associates. One name stood out: Elias Vance, the teacher. Rourke tracked him to a small town in Montana, living under the name Eli Voss, working as a night janitor at a community college. He flew out that night. Vance Voss was waiting on the porch when Rourke arrived. "You found the bus," he said. Not a question. "Yes." Vance sighed. "I knew they'd never stop looking." Inside, over bitter coffee, he told the truth. "I didn't plan it," he began, "but I knew it was coming." He'd been a young geologist in the 70s, worked with Crow, knew about the illegal logging, knew about the bodies they found in the woods, ancient, wrapped in bark, buried with strange symbols. Crow wanted to sell them to collectors. Vance refused. Quit, changed his name, moved to Cedar Hollow to disappear. But Crow found him. Years later, said he'd kept the artifacts, said he'd built something, a shrine, in the hollow, said he needed Vance to bring him fresh blood, young minds, untouched, to complete a ritual. "I thought he was insane," Vance whispered. "But then he showed me photos of kids from other towns, missing, never found." "So you agreed to the field trip?" "Yes. I thought if I went along I could protect them, warn them, stop him. But you didn't." "No." Vance's voice broke. "Because when we got to the overlook, Crow was already there, waiting. He had Dobbs, threatened to kill him if I didn't cooperate, said he'd take the kids anyway. So I played along. And Jonah, he saw Crow earlier that week, took that photo, tried to tell me. I told him to stay quiet, for his own safety." Vance buried his face in his hands. "I failed him. I failed them all." Rourke stood. "Where is Crow now?" Vance looked up, eyes hollow. "Dead. I killed him, that day, in the woods, after he took the bus." "How?" "I followed, found the bus parked in the hollow. Kids were gone. Crow was alone. I hit him with a rock, buried him under a tree. Then I buried the bus with a backhoe I stole from a construction site, dug deep, covered it with dirt, planted saplings, hoped no one would ever find it." Rourke stared at him. "You buried the bus to hide the crime?" "Yes. But why no bodies? Where are the kids?" Vance shook his head. "I don't know. When I got there, they were already gone. Only Crow remained, like he'd sent them somewhere else." Rourke didn't believe him. Not entirely. He returned to Cedar Hollow with Vance in custody. But the mystery deepened. Forensics found traces of blood in the bus, human, but degraded, unidentifiable. And then, a breakthrough. A hiker reported strange lights in the hollow. Rourke went alone at dawn, pushed through thick underbrush, found a clearing. In the center, a stone altar, carved with the same symbols from the 1970s burial site, and around it, 23 small mounds. Fresh earth. Rourke's blood ran cold. He called for backup. As they dug, they found them. Not bodies, personal items. Lena's red hair tie, Mateo's camera lens, Jonah's notebook, pages filled with frantic sketches of the man in the coat, each item carefully placed, like offerings. But no remains. Then, a final discovery. Buried beneath the altar, a metal box. Inside, 23 birth certificates, all forged, all listing the same father, Silas Crow. Rourke's mind reeled. The kids, they weren't random. They were his, illegitimate children, scattered across the state, placed in foster care, adopted, forgotten. Crow had been searching for them for years. The field trip, it wasn't a ritual. It was a reunion, a twisted family gathering. And Vance, he'd walked right into it. But why take them? Why vanish? Rourke dug into adoption records, cross-referenced with missing persons. Found a pattern. Every child on that bus had been adopted through the same agency. Evergreen Family Services, run by a woman named Helen Price, now deceased, but her daughter still lived in Cedar Hollow. Rourke found her running a bookstore downtown. Mildred Price, 60. Soft-spoken, eyes full of sorrow. She didn't resist. "I've waited for this day," she said. In her back room, she showed him files. "Mother didn't just place children," she whispered. "She sold them to men like Crow. Wealthy men, powerful men, who wanted heirs, but didn't want the mess of marriage. Crow paid for these kids, yes, but he wanted more than heirs. He believed in purification, said the old bloodlines were tainted, that only through sacrifice could the new line be pure." Sacrifice, Mildred nodded. He planned to take them to a compound in Nevada, a cult. They'd be raised in isolation, trained, used. But Vance killed him. Yes, and in the chaos, the kids were taken by Crow's followers, smuggled out, given new names, new lives. Are they alive? Mildred hesitated. "Some are. I've kept track, quietly, from afar. Lena Morrow, she's a nurse in Seattle. Mateo Ruiz, a photographer in New York. Jonah Pike, he died in 2003. Car accident." Rourke felt the weight of it all. Not a massacre, a trafficking ring, hidden in plain sight. The bus was buried not to hide murder, but to hide the escape. Vance had stopped Crow, but not the machine. Rourke arrested Mildred for conspiracy, but the real culprits were long gone. The cult, known as the Chosen Seed, had been dismantled in 2010. Leaders dead or imprisoned. The surviving kids, they didn't want to be found. They'd built lives, new identities. They didn't remember Cedar Hollow, didn't remember the bus, or chose not to. Rourke stood at the excavation site one last time. Rain falling. The bus gone now, hauled away for evidence. Only a scar in the earth remained. He placed 23 white roses on the ground. Not for the dead, for the lost, for the truth, and for the silence that would never truly be broken. Because some secrets are meant to stay buried, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. The rain hadn't stopped since they pulled Bus 47 from the earth. It fell in slow, steady sheets over Cedar Hollow, turning the excavation site into a slick basin of mud and memory. Yellow crime scene tape fluttered like dying flags in the wind. Sheriff Eleanor Briggs stood at the edge of the pit, arms crossed, jaw tight, watching as forensic technicians in white Tyvek suits moved with surgical precision through the skeletal remains of the vehicle. Every bolt unscrewed, every seat cushion lifted, every inch of rusted metal documented, photographed, bagged. They weren't just looking for bodies anymore. They were hunting for time. Detective Marcus Rourke arrived just after dawn on the 5th day. Boots crunching on gravel, trench coat soaked through at the shoulders, eyes sharp as flint beneath the brim of his damp fedora. He didn't speak to the press, didn't acknowledge the murmuring locals gathered behind the barricades. He walked straight to Briggs, who handed him a fresh evidence log without a word. "Anything?" he asked, voice low. "Blood," she said. "Dried, degraded, but human, at least 3 different profiles. And this." She held up a clear plastic bag. Inside, a single brass key, tarnished green with age, strung on a leather cord. Rourke took it, turned it over in his palm. "Looks old, like it opens a lock from another century, or a box no one was supposed to find," Briggs murmured. Back at the temporary command post, a repurposed school gymnasium 2 miles from the site, Rourke spread the evidence across folding tables, photos of the bus interior, close-ups of claw marks on the window frames, a child's hair tie caught in a seat hinge, a half-melted candy wrapper with the logo of a long-defunct local gas station, and the Polaroid, always the Polaroid. He stared at it for a long time. 23 kids, smiling, terrified, and the man in the coat, dark wool, high collar, hands tucked in pockets, face obscured by shadow, but posture rigid, controlled. Not a kidnapper, a conductor. Rourke called in a forensic artist. Within hours, a digital reconstruction emerged. A man in his late 50s, sharp cheekbones, thin lips, eyes that didn't blink, and on his neck, just visible beneath the collar, a tattoo, a snake coiled around a key. The same symbol on the brass key found in the bus. Rourke's pulse hammered. He cross-referenced the tattoo with state and federal databases. Nothing. But then he remembered Calloway's words. From the old days. He dug into archived police reports from the 1970s, pre-digital, pre-database. Paper files stored in a damp basement beneath the county courthouse. Dust choked the air as he flipped through brittle pages. Logging disputes, land fraud, disappearances, and then, October, a report filed by Deputy Harlan Briggs, Eleanor's father. Subject, Silas Crow, age 48. Owner, Crow Timber Co. Accused of trespassing on federally protected woodland near Devil's Gorge. Claims ancestral rights. Refuses to vacate. Threatened officer with axe. Released on bail. Case pending. Attached, a mugshot. Rourke's breath caught. The man in the Polaroid. Older, yes, but unmistakable. Silas Crow. And beside the photo, a notation in faded ink. Tattoo, serpentine key. Right side neck. Claims it's family crest. Rourke slammed the file shut. Crow wasn't just a logger. He was a believer, a fanatic. And he'd been waiting decades for his children to come home. The next morning, Rourke drove to the nursing home, where Martha Dobbs lived. She sat by a window wrapped in a knitted shawl, staring at a bird feeder. Her hands trembled as she accepted the photo of Crow. "Yes," she whispered. "That's him." Did Frank know him well? He worked for him in 72 and 73, before the trouble, before the bodies. Rourke leaned forward. Bodies? Martha's eyes clouded. They found 3 men in the woods, near the hollow, buried shallow. No IDs, Frank said. He said Crow did it. Over a land dispute. But the sheriff back then, Harlan Briggs, he closed the case fast. Said it was animals. But Frank, he never forgot. Did Crow threaten Frank? Not then. But years later, yes. She paused. Throat working. Frank got sick in 92. Cancer. Needed money. Crow offered him a job. One last drive, he said. Frank refused at first. But the bills, the treatments. Her voice broke. He took it. Said it was just a field trip. Just kids. But I saw the look in his eyes that morning, like he was walking to his own funeral. Rourke's mind raced. Did Crow tell him what he planned to do with the kids? No, but Frank knew it wasn't right. He left a note. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. Found it in his toolbox after he vanished. Rourke unfolded it with gloved hands. "If I don't come back, tell them I tried to stop him. Tell them I'm sorry." No date, no details. But enough. Frank Dobbs hadn't stolen the bus. He'd been forced to drive it. And he'd known he wouldn't survive. Rourke turned next to the only other adult who'd been there, Deputy Ray Calloway. He found him not at his trailer, but at the cemetery, standing before a single headstone. Jonah Pike, 1978, 1990. Calloway didn't turn as Rourke approached. "I visit every week," he said, voice rough. "Even though I know he's not here." "You really think he's alive?" "I don't know, but I owe him the hope." Rourke stood beside him. Rain dripped from the brim of his hat. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." Calloway exhaled, long and slow. "I lied about the scream, but not about what I saw. After I radioed in, static, like always, I went down the trail, not to look for someone in the gorge, to check the secondary road, the one that loops behind the ridge. Why? Because I saw tire tracks, fresh, leading off the overlook, not from our bus, smaller, A pickup maybe. And I followed them half a mile, found the bus parked in a clearing. Engine off, door open. Inside, empty, but on the driver's seat, this. He reached into his coat and handed Rourke a small, water-stained envelope. Rourke opened it. Inside, 23 adoption certificates, all signed by Helen Price, all listing Silas Crowe as biological father. All those kids, Calloway said. They weren't random, they were his, scattered like seeds, and he was gathering his harvest. Rourke's stomach turned. Why didn't you report this? Because by the time I got back, the bus was gone. Kids were screaming. Vance was hysterical. And my radio, it wasn't just dead. The battery was missing. Someone took it. While I was gone. Crowe, or someone working for him. Rourke studied the man beside him. Weathered, broken, but eyes still burning with guilt. You could have saved them. I know, Calloway whispered. Every night, I hear the bus engine, fading, and I run, but I never catch it. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A retired state trooper named Dale Mercer, now living in Eugene, called the command post after seeing the news. I worked the original search, he told Rourke over the phone. We never found the bus, but we found something else. A witness. Who? A trucker. Name was Roy Bissett. Said he saw a yellow school bus heading east on Highway 26 at 11:03 a.m. on October 17th, 1994. But not alone. It was being followed by a black panel van. Did you follow up? We tried. Bissett vanished 2 days later. Truck found abandoned near the Columbia River. No sign of struggle. Case went cold. Rourke tracked down Bissett's last known address, a storage locker in Gresham. Inside, covered in dust, sat a logbook, page after page of delivery routes. And on October 17, 1994, saw bus, yellow, Yola, 47, followed by black van, Oregon plate 4KX8112. Driver wore dark coat, looked like he owned the road. Rourke ran the plate. Registered to a shell corporation, Evergreen Holdings LLC, dissolved in, but linked to one bank account, one name, Helen Price, the adoption agent. Rourke's hands shook as he dialed Briggs. We were wrong, he said. This wasn't just Crowe, it was a network. Price placed the kids. Crowe funded it. Dobbs drove them. And someone else, someone with a van, transported them after. Who? Briggs asked. I don't know yet. But they're still out there. That night, Rourke couldn't sleep. He sat in his motel room, maps pinned to the walls, red string connecting names, dates, locations, Cedar Hollow, Devil's Gorge, The Hollow, Portland, Nevada, Evergreen Family Services, Crowe Timber, bus, and then a detail he'd missed. In the original police report from 1994, under items recovered at scene, it listed one disposable camera found near Boulder east of Overlook, film intact. Rourke bolted upright, film intact. He called the evidence archive. They still had it. He drove through the rain to the county storage facility, heart pounding. The camera was in a sealed box. He took it to a photo lab in Portland that still processed film. 3 hours later, the technician handed him a contact sheet. 12 exposures. First, kids boarding the bus. Second, Vance checking name. Third, Calloway lighting a cigarette. Fourth, the Gorge Overlook. Fifth, Jonah Pike pointing downward. Sixth, Mateo raising his camera. Seventh, Lena laughing. Eighth, the bus parked at the Overlook. Ninth, a shadowy figure near the tree line, coat, hat, face hidden. 10th, the same figure, closer, now holding something long and metallic. 11th, the bus door opening from the inside. 12th, darkness. But in the corner of frame 11, barely visible, a reflection in the bus window. Not the figure, not the trees, a face, watching from inside the bus, eyes wide, mouth open in a silent scream. Lena Morrow. She'd seen him, and she'd been left behind. No taken. Rourke stared at the photo until his vision blurred. They hadn't vanished all at once. They'd been taken one by one, while the others watched. The next morning, Rourke went to the school. Not the current one, the old Cedar Hollow High, shuttered in 2005, now a condemned shell of broken windows and graffiti. He walked the halls, flashlight cutting through dust. Found the old AV room. Inside, on a shelf, a box labeled Field Trip. He opened it. Slides, notes, permission slips, and a VHS tape. Label Devil's Gorge. Raw footage. Eva. Rourke's hands trembled as he found a working VCR at the local library. He pressed play. Grainy footage. Wind howling. Vance's voice shaky, sedimentary layers dating back 100. Kids milling about. Mateo filming, Lena joking, Jonah standing apart. Then, off camera, a voice. Deep. Calm. Elias. It's time. Vance froze. The camera swung toward the tree line. Silas Crow stepped into view. Not old, not frail, strong, commanding. Eyes like ice. He walked toward the group. Kids backed away. Vance dropped the camera. The lens pointed up at the sky, but the audio continued. Crow, you brought them. Good. Vance, I didn't have a choice. Crow, there's always a choice. You chose your blood over your conscience. Vance, they're children. Crow, they're heirs. And tonight, they return to the root. Then screams. Scuffling. A bus engine roaring to life. And finally, Crow's voice, soft, almost tender. Don't worry, Elias. You'll see them again. In the next life. The tape ended. Rourke sat in silence for a long time. Then he called Briggs. We need to exhume Silas Crow. They found his grave in an unmarked plot in the far corner of the Cedar Hollow Cemetery. No headstone, just a sunken patch of earth. As the backhoe dug, Rourke stood tense, hand on his sidearm. At 6 feet down, the bucket hit something solid. Not a coffin, a metal crate. Rusted shut. They pried it open with crowbars. Inside, bones, but not crow. Too small, child-sized. Rourke's blood turned to ice. He counted. 23 sets. Skulls, ribs, femurs, all carefully arranged. And on each skull, a small carved stone pendant, shaped like a key. Briggs gasped. My God, he killed them, buried them here, then took the bus to fake their escape. But Rourke shook his head. No, these bones, they're ancient. Look at the wear, the mineral deposits. These are the remains from the 1970s burial site, the ones Crow's crew found. He picked up one pendant. He kept them as relics, as proof of his bloodline. Then, beneath the bones, a journal, leather-bound, pages brittle. Rourke opened it with gloved hands. Handwriting neat, precise. October 16, 1994. Tomorrow the harvest begins. My children will come to me, not as orphans, not as strangers, but as the chosen, the seed, the future. Vance resists, but fear will make him obey. Dobbs is weak, dying. He will do as he's told. The van is ready. The compound awaits. In 3 days they will be reborn, and Cedar Hollow will forget them, as it forgot me. The last entry, October 17. Rourke closed the journal. The truth was worse than he imagined. Crow hadn't killed them that day. He'd taken them alive, to raise them, to use them. And the bus? It was never meant to be found, until someone made sure it was. That night, Rourke received an anonymous email. No sender, no trace, just a single image. A recent photo, Lena Morrow, older, tired, but unmistakable, standing outside a hospital in Seattle. Caption, She remembers. Rourke's phone rang seconds later. A woman's voice, calm, measured. "You're close, detective. But stop digging, for their sake." Who is this? A guardian. One of many. Where are they? Safe, hidden, living. Some don't remember, some do. But none want to go back to what? To being property. To being symbols. To being sacrifices. Who buried the bus? A pause. Then, someone who wanted the truth to surface. After we were gone. Who? The one who couldn't live with the lie. The line went dead. Rourke knew. Elias Vance. He'd buried the bus not to hide the crime, but to mark the grave. So one day, someone would find it, and ask the right questions. The next morning, Rourke stood at the edge of the hollow. Fog clung to the trees like burial shrouds. He walked to the stone altar, kneeled, pressed his palm against the cold rock, and whispered, "I found you, not the bodies, but the story, the truth." And that, he knew, was the only justice left, because the children were gone. Not dead, but taken, reborn. And somewhere in the quiet corners of the world, they were living, with new names, new lives, and the ghost of a yellow bus fading into legend. But not forgotten, never forgotten. The wind howled through the pines like a dirge, as Detective Marcus Rourke stood alone in the hollow, on the morning of November 12, 2021, 25 days since the bus was unearthed, 27 years and 26 days since it vanished. Frost clung to the grass, brittle and white, and the stone altar stood stark against the grey dawn, its surface etched with symbols that seemed to pulse in the half-light. Rourke hadn't slept in 36 hours. His eyes burned. His coat smelled of rain, mud, and old grief. But his mind was clear, razor sharp, because the final pieces were falling into place, not with a bang, not with a confession, but with silence, the kind that speaks louder than screams. He'd spent the last week chasing ghosts. Lena Morrow's address in Seattle led to a dead end. She'd moved 3 months prior. No forwarding. Mateo Ruiz's photography studio in Brooklyn had closed in 2019. Neighbors said he left suddenly like he was running. Jonah Pike's death certificate listed a single-car crash on a Nevada highway, but the state trooper who filed the report had retired to Costa Rica and refused to talk. Every lead dissolved like smoke. Every survivor had vanished into the fabric of ordinary life, stitching new identities so tightly that even their shadows didn't remember Cedar Hollow. But Rourke wasn't chasing them anymore. He was chasing the machine that made them disappear. And the machine had a name. The Chosen Seed. Not a cult in the traditional sense. No robes, no sermons, no compound with barbed wire. No, this was quieter, smarter, wealthier. A network of adoptive parents, lawyers, doctors, and private security operatives who believed in blood purity, ancestral destiny, and the divine right of certain lineages to rule. Silas Crowe hadn't founded it. He'd inherited it from his grandfather, a eugenicist who'd worked with California's sterilization programs in the 1920s. The organization had evolved, gone underground, funded by old money, shielded by offshore accounts, protected by men in suits who called themselves guardians. And Helen Price? She wasn't just an adoption agent. She was a recruiter. Her agency, Evergreen Family Services, had placed over 200 children between 1978 and 1995. All with special heritage. All with Crowe's DNA. Donated anonymously, harvested during his brief marriage, extracted from blood samples during routine medical visits. He'd seeded the state like a farmer, then waited for the harvest. The field trip wasn't random. It was a reunion, a homecoming. And Bus 47 was the chariot. Rourke returned to the evidence room that afternoon, where Sheriff Briggs waited with a new file. "Got a hit on the van," she said, voice low. "Plate 4KX812. Registered to Evergreen Holdings. Yes, but the driver? We found him." She slid a photo across the table. Man in his late 40s. Clean cut. Military bearing. Name, Daniel Hargrove. Former U.S. Army Ranger. Discharged in 1991 for psychological instability. Hired by a private security firm in 1992, Ironclad Protection Services, which Rourke quickly learned was a front for the chosen seed. Hargrove vanished, but not before buying a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. Rourke's pulse quickened. He's still alive. Maybe, but here's the kicker. Briggs tapped another document. In 2003, a man matching Hargrove's description was spotted in Nevada at a private boarding school called Viridian Academy, funded by a shell corporation linked to Price's estate. Rourke's mind raced. Jonah Pike died in Nevada in... Exactly. He booked a flight that night. Viridian Academy sat in the Mojave Desert, low adobe buildings, solar panels, high walls. Officially, it was a school for gifted underprivileged youth. Unofficially, it was a finishing school for heirs. Rourke arrived under the guise of a state education inspector. The headmistress, a woman with ice-blue eyes and a voice like silk, greeted him warmly. "We pride ourselves on discretion," she said, leading him through spotless hallways. "Our students come from complicated backgrounds. We give them structure." Rourke nodded, scanning the faces in classrooms. Pale, quiet, watchful. None looked older than 18, but something in their eyes, the stillness, the lack of rebellion, felt off. In the library, he found it. A yearbook from... Flipped to the senior class, and there, third row, second from left. Jonah Pike, older, thinner, hair cropped short, but unmistakable. Caption: Jonah Crow, class valedictorian, bound for Oxford. Rourke's breath caught. They'd given him back his father's name, his legacy, his cage. He asked casually about Jonah's accident. The headmistress's smile didn't waver. A tragedy. He was returning from a scholarship interview. Fell asleep at the wheel. Such a loss. But her fingers tightened on her clipboard. Rourke pressed. Did he ever speak of Cedar Hollow? A flicker in her eyes. He didn't believe in the past, detective, only the future. Later, in the parking lot, Rourke found a note tucked under his windshield wiper. Stop, or the others die. No signature. Just a key symbol drawn in red ink. He crumpled it, didn't stop. Back in Oregon, Rourke dug deeper into Ironclad Protection. Found payroll records. Hargrove wasn't the only operative. There were 12, all ex-military. All vanished between 1994, but one name stood out. Evelyn Shaw, former Army medic, hired by Ironclad in... Discharged in... for emotional distress following field assignment. Rourke tracked her to a cabin in the Cascade Mountains. She answered the door with a shotgun. Go away, she said, voice raw. I know about the bus, Rourke said. She hesitated, then lowered the barrel. Inside, the cabin was sparse. Wood stove, cot, shelves of medical texts, and on the wall, a photo of 23 children. Not the Cedar Hollow kids, others, from other towns, other years. You were the medic, Rourke said. I was supposed to keep them healthy, she whispered, on the trip, during the transition. What transition? From old life to new. They sedated them. Gave them new names, new histories, told them their parents abandoned them, that only the seed loved them. Where were they taken? First to a safe house in Idaho, then scattered, to schools like Viridian, to families who'd been vetted for decades. Did any resist? Jonah did. Her eyes filled with tears. He remembered, tried to escape. They punished him, broke his spirit. Sent him to Viridian as a warning. And the bus? Why bury it? Vance did it, after he killed Crow. He thought if the bus was gone, they'd think the kids were dead, that the seed would stop looking. But they didn't. No, they just got smarter, quieter. Rourke leaned forward. Are the Cedar Hollow kids alive? Most are. Lena's a trauma surgeon in Chicago. Mateo's a war photographer in Syria. 2 died. Jonah and a boy named Trevor Mills, leukemia, 2008. The rest, they don't know each other anymore. Don't remember the bus, or they've been told it was a dream. Why contact me? The email, the photo. Evelyn looked away, because Vance is dying, and he wants the truth known. Before it's too late. Rourke found Elias Vance in a hospice in Billings, Montana, wasted by cancer. Tubes in his arms, but eyes clear. He smiled when Rourke entered. "You found them," he said. "Not all, but enough." Vance coughed weakly. "I buried the bus, not to hide, to mark, like a gravestone. So someone would ask, why here? Why now? You could have told the truth in... I tried. No one believed me. Called me a coward, a liar, said I abandoned my students." He closed his eyes, but I didn't. I followed them to Idaho, watched from the trees, saw them loaded into vans, saw Hargrove slap Lena when she cried. I wanted to charge in, but there were 10 armed men. I would have died, and no one would have known. So you came back, buried the bus, disappeared. Yes, and for 27 years I waited. Hoped someone would dig deep enough. Rourke sat beside him. Why now? Why let the construction crew find it? Vance opened his eyes. Because I'm dying, and the Guardians, they're getting bold again, recruiting new blood. I had to leave a trail, for you. He reached under his pillow and handed Rourke a flash drive. Names, accounts, safe houses, everything. Rourke took it. "Thank you." Vance smiled faintly. "Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I never stopped looking." He died that night, quietly, with the rain tapping on the window like a promise. The fallout was swift. Rourke handed the flash drive to the FBI. Within weeks, raids hit 12 states. Viridian Academy shuttered. Ironclad protection dissolved. 37 Guardians arrested. The chosen seed exposed, gutted, its roots burned. But the children, they were left alone, by choice. Rourke sent each a letter, anonymous, typed, no return address. You were taken, not lost. You have a past. It's yours to reclaim or forget. No one will force you either way. Only one replied. Lena, not with words, but with a photograph. Her, standing at the edge of Devil's Gorge. Hair shorter, face older, but eyes the same. And in her hand, a single white rose. She'd gone back, not to mourn, but to remember. On the 1-year anniversary of the bus's discovery, Rourke stood at the excavation site. The pit had been filled. Grass grew over it now, green, soft, ordinary. He placed 23 roses in a circle, then stepped back. The wind stirred the petals. Somewhere in the trees, a crow cawed. And for the first time in 27 years, Cedar Hollow felt quiet, not haunted, not healed, but at peace, because the truth was out. The lies were buried, and the children, wherever they were finally free. Rourke turned and walked away. The road stretched ahead, empty, but not lonely, because some stories don't end with justice. They end with memory, and that, in the end, is enough.